we're starting a new limud this fall, and it's based on the sefer from Rabbi Yossi Michalowicz, the author of the Bilvavi Mishkan Evnes series, and he has a new series of sefarim called Shabbos Kodesh, and the specific volume we're going to learn from is the one that says Hachonas l'Shabbos Kodesh, how to prepare for the Shabbos. And since I found that going through his form, to enjoy going through his form, you really have to go through it every day. And doing this topic once a week, we're not going to get very far. So what I decided to do was to basically outline, maybe more than outline, what's in the book. And what you have before you, and which hopefully we'll have online by tomorrow, is an overview of the first chapter of the book. And the name of our series, the way I've called it, is How to Turn Friday into Erev Shabbos. Because many people look at Friday as, Friday, but they don't understand the value of it being Erev Shabbos, and really the key to Shabbos is Erev Shabbos. So Rav Schwartz has a sefer that basically the whole sefer is talking about Erev Shabbos. So that's what we're going to talk about. I don't know how long we're going to go, how long it will take. But today we're not going to talk a lot about Erev Shabbos. We're going to go in the order of his sefer. And the first chapter of his sefer is called Shalosh Shabbatot. 3 types of Shabbos. So basically I'm just going to go through everything that I've put down over here. So you really don't have to take a lot of notes, hopefully. Maybe there'll be some questions. Maybe we'll add some extra ideas. But if we would go through the text, it would take us, this chapter would easily take us 2 to 3 weeks just to do the first chapter, and hopefully we'll be ambitious and get the first chapter done and go chapter by chapter every week. So let's begin. First issue that the tzaddik is going to tell us is that, when does really Shabbos start? When does Shabbos start? So if you look in the Jewish law sources, there's many levels of when Shabbos starts. From a technical point of view, from the biblical point of view, Shabbos starts when the sun sets. When the sun sets, Friday night, Shabbos starts. The Torah says, "Vahiver, vayivoker, yom echad." It was evening, it was day, one day. So Jewish day starts at night. So Shabbos really starts Friday at sunset. However, you can't always determine exactly when the sun sets. So certainly it would be wise to start it a few minutes early just to be safe. So you can't wait till sunset. You have to at least start it a couple minutes before that for the safety zone of not transgressing the Shabbos. However, we see that biblically there's another concept called Tosefes Shabbos, where you have to add to the Shabbos. Where God says, even though Shabbos starts at sunset, I want you to start at least a few minutes before the Shabbos, and to take the Shabbos out a few minutes after the Shabbos. We see, if you further look in the Shulchan Aruch, that we are told that work that is not necessary for Shabbos should not be done. I have a typo already. No, I don't. Let's back that up. Work that is necessary for Shabbos, you can do that until Shabbos. You have to make a kugel. You can make a kugel right up to Shabbos. That's not a problem, because it's all for Shabbos. However, work that is unrelated to Shabbos, that already you have to stop by mincha. There's a debate which mincha that's referring to. There's the early mincha time, there's the late mincha time. According to some opinions, the early mincha time is a half an hour after midday, and according to other opinions, it would be the later mincha time, which is 2.5 hours before sunset. But either way, work that is not related to Shabbos has to be stopped a number of hours before the Shabbos. And then if you further look in the Shulchan Aruch, we're told that really on Friday morning you have to prepare for the Shabbos at least, because the Torah says on the 6th day you should prepare that which you're going to bring. So we already see on one level that you don't start Shabbos with sunset. Just purely from the halacha, you're already beginning to see you have to start engaging in getting ready for Shabbos early. But let's see how far that goes. So the Talmud says a person cannot travel on a boat within 3 days before Shabbos. Now, this is in the days, I'm not talking about cruise ships now, where you don't even feel you're on the water, but a typical ship that you would feel you're on the water. And the Talmud says you should not get on a cruise ship, on a ship, within 3 days before Shabbos. And the simple reasons are to avoid desecrating the Shabbos, because if you're traveling very much before Shabbos, there's situations where you may have to come on to desecrating the Shabbos. Or number two, you might not be used to the sea, and therefore you might develop seasickness, and within 3 days you're more liable for seasickness. You won't have Oneg Shabbos, you won't enjoy the Shabbos, so you're not allowed to do that. However, the mystics explain it on a deeper level. And they say that really, we know that on Shabbos you have a neshama yisera. There's called an extra level of soul. You have an extra soul, which we'll talk about another time exactly what that is. But maybe even by today we'll understand a little better. But there's an extra, a Jew is able to feel an extra strong connection to one's own soul and an extra strong connection to Hashem. Now we know that the base neshama soul has 3 levels. It has a level of nefesh, the level of ruach, and the level of neshama. Nefesh is the part of the soul that eternalizes all the actions that a person does. Ruach is the level of soul that enables a person to speak and have the right emotion directed to avodas Hashem, and the right feelings to avodas Hashem. And the neshama is that part of the soul that gives the human being the ability to think spiritual thoughts properly. So the rabbis say like this, that we get a neshama yisera on Shabbos, but the truth of the matter is it starts 3 days early. It starts on the 4th day of the week. You already get that first extra neshama aspect of the nefesh, of the lower level of soul, already comes to the person, begins to come on the 4th day of the week. And by the end of the 4th day of the week, you have your full level of the extra level of the nefesh, of the lower level of the soul. And on the 5th day of the week, you get the next level comes in of the ruach, of the emotion, speech. And then on Erev Shabbos, you get the last level of the neshama yisera, which is the neshama, the ability to think Torah ideas. And in the next chapter, he discusses more of these 3 aspects of how. So you see, you've got to, before Shabbos already, you're preparing for Shabbos in the realm of thought, speech, and action. So that's already 3 days before. As we know that the 3 days before Shabbos are already attributed to the Shabbos ahead. So this is why you don't travel on a boat 3 days before Shabbos, because we don't want to spoil your thoughts, speech, and actions that should be focused towards Shabbos. So you already see that from Wednesday, Tuesday night already, that you should already be focusing your actions towards Shabbos, and by Wednesday night you're already focusing your speech towards Shabbos, and by Thursday night you're focusing your thoughts towards Shabbos. So it's already starting much earlier Shabbos. We know that Shammai in the Talmud, he had a very special way he prepared for Shabbos. He started preparing for Shabbos on Sunday. We went to the market on Sunday. He saw a very good cow. He says, this cow is for Shabbos already. If he found a nicer one on Monday, he replaced it with a nicer one on Monday. But already from Shabbos, from Sunday, he was already preparing for Shabbos. Okay? So really now we see from Shammai that the whole week, even from Sunday, you're preparing for Shabbos. I'm just saying this, and the tzaddik is saying this in the context of we're thinking about Erev Shabbos. Well, there's much more than just Erev Shabbos. There's much more than Erev Shabbos. We're already moving it all the way up to Sunday. You have to start thinking about Shabbos. The truth of the matter is, we want to see it even goes more than this. The Talmud says a very famous statement, Ilmole mishamim Yisrael shtei Shabbos kehilchasa miyad nigolim. If the Jewish people would only keep 2 Shabbos according to halacha, it would immediately be redeemed. So the question is, why would you need 2? If you keep 1 Shabbos, it should be good enough. If you keep 1 good Shabbos, what do I need 2 for? There's a lot of answers on this. So Rav Schwartz says that there's a discussion in the Talmud. What if a person gets lost in the forest and loses track of time? And he's not going to be found in the near future. So what should be your attitude towards keeping Shabbos? So one rabbi says is you start counting on the first day that you're lost, you've lost track, and you say today is going to be the first day of the week. And you count 6 days, and then the 7th day is your Shabbos. You might be wrong, doesn't matter. You have to keep some kind of Shabbos. Another rabbi says, no, the first day that you're counting is Shabbos. And then the next 6 days are days of the week in which you count of days of work. And the rabbis say, what does this argument depend on? So they say it depends. We look at the very first Shabbos of the creation of the world. How do we look at that very first Shabbos? Do we look at it from the Creator's point of view, or do we look at it from man's point of view? Look at it from the Creator's point of view. He started working on first day of the week, second day, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. The way the world started was 6 days of work and then Shabbos. So you see, the system is 6 days and then Shabbos. So what's there to discuss? The answer is, that's from God's perspective. There were no human beings yet on the planet to appreciate what was going on over here. On the 6th day of creation, Hashem created man. Created him on Erev Shabbos. And the very first full day that man was meant to experience would be Shabbos. And that's indeed what he did experience. There was a little Erev Shabbos, but that was negligible. It wasn't a full day. So it was the first day that a human being lived was Shabbos. And what happened after that? The next 6 days of the week, he had to work. So now you see there's two perspectives. Do you do 6 days of work preceded by Shabbos? Or do you do Shabbos preceded by 6 days of the week? And we'll see shortly, this is the beginning of the explanation of what the Gemara means. If you keep 2 Shabbos, immediately we redeemed. Which means to say, we have to keep the 2 aspects of Shabbos. There's an aspect of the Shabbos of creation where you work 6 days and you rest on the 7th. And there's the aspect of Shabbos where you start with Shabbos and you rest on the next 6 days. I've not yet explained enough for you to understand this answer. We're just giving you the skeletal answer. As we develop this, you're going to see how powerful this statement is. But the aspect, it's not keeping 2 Shabbos actually. That's not what Gemara means, to keep Shabbos this Shabbos and then the next Shabbos. It means the 2 aspects of Shabbos, where there's an aspect of Shabbos that comes after 6 days of work, and there's an aspect of Shabbos that comes before the next 6 days. You shouldn't be having to take too many notes. It's pretty well laid out, but if that's no problem. If you like taking notes, I'm happy you're doing it. But you should at least be taking less notes, because there's a lot of things that are written.
Less than yesterday. We can feel bad.
Okay. So now, let's try to understand, what are these 2 types of Shabbos? So, what does Shabbos mean? What does Shabbos mean? Shabbos means rest. Shabbos means shvita, to cease doing what you're doing. So, we're going to see that there's 2 ways that you could say that you are resting, that you are ceasing. There's one way that you're resting from actual activity. You're working, and you're working, and you're working, and then you stop. That's one type of rest. It's one kind of shvita. And there's another kind that we have to explain that has nothing to do with working. There's a resting that you can have even when you're not working. Okay. What does that mean? Okay, let's backtrack. The simple meaning is, just like God worked for 6 days, He created the world. Then He ceased from work. He did a shvita. So He worked 6 days and stopped. So we do the same thing. We used to work 6 days, so we stopped. God worked on the 7th day from the work on the 6th day. So the 7th day of Shabbos was clearly a day of rest after working for 6 days. And that's a simple meaning of rest. On the other hand, how about before God created the world? Was He working before He created the world? I can't say the day before, because there was no concept of day before He created the world, but the reality that existed before God created the world was God working. No, He was resting. And this is what we will call resting before working. Alright? So God, on the one hand, rested in the context of His creating the world, was working after 6 days. But God also rested before He did any work at all, resting with no connection to work at all, which is a much deeper concept of rest, as we will now explain. Now, there is a very famous statement about Shabbos, a very difficult statement. The Mechilta says, when Shabbos comes, it should be in your eyes as if all your work is kol malachtecha asuya. All your work has been done. Ki'ilu, as if all your work has been done, and you shouldn't think about your work. It's probably one of the hardest aspects of Shabbos if you're a businessman. You're in the middle of all kinds of business. You have to walk away Friday afternoon, and you have to act as if all your work is done. Very difficult concept. How can a person feel on Shabbos that all his work is done when he knows it isn't done? Even to say as if your work is done, when you know it's not done, how could you feel that way? So, the answer is, on one level, yes, on the one hand, we try to feel as if the work is done. That's one way of looking at it. You got to kind of psych yourself up to feel the work is done. Or, there's another way. You can feel that there never was a need to do any work to begin with. And then your work is also done. And he gives a beautiful example. Let's say somebody hires a carpenter to build a table. Okay? So he hires him. Carpenter comes up with plans. He says, I got a week of work to do. It's going to take me a week to make this table. And as he now is prepared to start the work is definitely not done. Then a minute before he starts working, he gets a call from the guy who wants the table and says, I'm canceling the order. At that point in time, when the order is canceled, is all the carpenter's work done? Yeah, all his work is done. Why? Because there's no reason to build anymore. The order was canceled, so all the work is done. Okay? So now, how do we define something as being finished? Malachta asuya. Your work is finished. Do we have to only say if the work is actually finished? Or can we say that there's no work that needs to be done? If there's no work that needs to be done, that's even a higher level of that your work is finished. Because there really is nothing to do. Now, the question is, how do you define that something is finished? Well, you can define it by either it reaching its conclusion. I worked hard and I finished the product. Or you could say, I never started. And it's considered finished because there was no need for it at all. That's what asuya means. Asuya means it's done. It means it's complete. And more importantly, it means there's nothing lacking. There's nothing lacking. You're not lacking anything. Why does a person ever have to do anything? Why do you have to make it? Why do you have to make a table? Only if you're missing a table. If you're missing a table, then you have to make a table. When do you have to make anything? Unless something's missing. You have to make supper. Why? Because supper's missing. There's no supper. There's nothing to eat. I have to make supper. I don't have any place to put my books. I have to make a table. There's something missing. But what if nothing's missing? If nothing's missing, then everything's complete. There's nothing that you need to complete. And for that matter, everything is done. Everything is finished. So let's think. Before God created the world, before there was a ratzon for God to create the world, what existed? God in His infinite reality. Question, is anything missing? There's nothing missing. God is perfect. At that point in time, before the world started, all the work was finished. Because there was nothing to finish. Now this is really the ultimate reality of existence. God's reality is a perfect reality. And in terms of God's reality, all the work is done. There's nothing that needs to be done. Now, after the world was created in 6 days, when Shabbos then came into the world, and now you got 6 days of work. Well, God says you got to stop working. And God says you got to consider as if your work is done, because you've been working for 6 days, because a lot of things are missing. Your life is not complete. If your life was complete, you wouldn't have worked all 6 days. And then Hashem says, maybe even if it's not totally finished, you got to act as if it is finished. That's the Shabbos after 6 days of the week. But the Shabbos before 6 days of the week, it's not as if the work was finished, because that Shabbos, there was a Shabbos, a theoretical Shabbos before the first day of creation. Before the first day of creation, before Hashem said, let there be life, there was even a greater Shabbos. There was a Shabbos where nothing needed to be done. It was just the world of the infinite being where nothing was missing and everything was perfect and there was no need to work. So we see now that there's a concept that there is Shabbos followed by the 6 days of the week. And then there's the 6 days of the week that precede the Shabbos. From the very first moments of creation, there was a Shabbos that preceded the creation of the world. And that Shabbos that preceded the creation of the work, all the work was done. Why? Because there was nothing lacking, there was nothing deficient, and everything was done. That's the concept of Shabbos, and then 6 days of the week. On the other hand, there's another concept of there's 6 days of the week where I'm working, and we would hope that everything was done, and we'll have to explain at another time what does it mean exactly that your work is done. But at least it has to be as if all your work is done, but you've been busy trying to perfect the world or your own life that needed perfection, and you hope that by Shabbos you finish that. But that is saying your work is done after the work has been done. And it may or may not always be done according to the way you're feeling. But the Shabbos before the 6 days, before there's even a need for any deficiency, it's only Hashem, then clearly your work is totally done. Because there's no need, there's no deficiency, there's no need to work. So there's a saying the work is done because you really finished the work, or you could say your work is done because there's no need to have any work done at all. Now, these two ways of looking at things will now give a whole different perspective on how we look at the 6 days of the week. And what really is happening, if we look at this idea, when does Shabbos really begin? Shabbos really begins on the Shabbos before. On the Shabbos before. On the Shabbos before. Just like the first Shabbos of creation. The first Shabbos of creation began on the Shabbos before creation began. So, now this is a very important idea because this is a paradigm shift. We usually perceive a week as 6 days of working, and then you come to the Shabbos. And what you're seeing from this Chazal, and from the Gemara that says the guy's lost in the desert, there's two ways of looking at it. That there's one pathway of 6 days of the week towards the upcoming Shabbos, which begins on the first day of the week, and that's the conventional one that we understand. But on a deeper level, when a person steps into the first day of the week, he is now moving from the previous Shabbos. And so what's happening is the person is simultaneously moving towards the next Shabbos and from the previous Shabbos. Now, from the perspective of Shabbos before the next 6 days, it's before the 6 days. Just like creation, it was before the 6 days. There's nothing to work. There's nothing to do. Nothing's missing. There's nothing missing. So let's take it a step further. The Arizal says like this. Now you're going to take it a step further. He says, so what happens as Shabbos, coming to the end of Shabbos, you have that Neshama Yisera. You got for a whole 24 hours, you got this extra soul. So Arizal says, so what happens on the first day of the week? Starting on Motzei Shabbos, what happens the first day of the week? You begin to lose the level of Neshama of the Neshama Yisera. You don't lose it all. You start losing it at Havdalah. Just start losing it. It takes a whole day to lose the Neshama aspect of the Neshama Yisera. And then on the second day of the week, you lose the Ruach level of the Neshama Yisera. And on the third day of the week, you lose the Nefesh layer of the Neshama Yisera. That's why the halacha is, if you didn't make Havdalah on Motzei Shabbos, you still have until Tuesday to make Havdalah. Because there's still some aspect of Shabbos, the past Shabbos, that's still residing within you. Right? With this, you understand a Medrash. The Medrash says that the 6 days of the week had mates, had partners, except for the Shabbos. Now, there's conflicting Medrashim, but the one Medrash says, the one we're going to quote, says, who were the partners? So they say that the first day was the partner with the 6th day, the second day was a partner with the 5th day, and the third day was a partner with the 4th day. Why? Because they have exactly the same element of Shabbos to them. On the first day, you've got all three elements, but you're transitioning from full level, and you're transitioning out of the neshama aspect of the Shabbos. It's there, it starts full, and as the day proceeds, you're losing that whole neshama. But it's a day where neshama is in transition. That's Sunday. What's Friday? Friday is coming the other direction. The neshama is transitioning inside of you. So that first and 6th day are the day where you have the highest level extra soul of neshama. Second day of the week and the fifth day is the week where the transition of the level of ruach. And the third and fourth is the transition of the level of nefesh. So what's coming out over here? That every day of the week has aspects of Shabbos in it. Different aspects of Shabbos in it. And the Shabbos itself had no mate. Because it's beyond the other 6 days of the week. So Hashem says, don't worry, you will have a partner, and that partner is the Jewish people. We'll have to understand what that means. But it must mean that the Jewish people themselves must have the full aspect of Shabbos somewhere within themselves. We may not appreciate that or realize that. That's why the halacha says, if a non-Jew keeps Shabbos, he's chayav misa. Why? Because if Shabbos is the mate, is the marriage partner of the Jewish people, then the marriage partner, you can't have anybody else interfering in a marriage. Only the Jew who keeps the Shabbos is intimate with the Shabbos. If a non-Jew wants to get involved in the Shabbos, it's like an extramarital affair, where he's just moving into the Shabbos over here. So now we're beginning to appreciate these aspects of the two bookends of Shabbos. Okay. Now, the Gemara, now there's conflicting Chazal again. On the one hand, there is where we say in Kabbalah Shabbos, Likras Shabbos l'chuven elcha, let us go towards the Shabbos, ki hi makor habracha, because it's the source of blessing. So on the one hand, we're told that Shabbos is the source of blessing. Okay. Now, right now, how many levels of understanding of Shabbos do we have? Well, on the one hand, we say the simple level is there's 6 days of the week, like 6 steps up a ladder, climbing a ladder. Come to the 7th day, it's Shabbos. That's the 7th day, that's Shabbos. Shabbos is a source of blessing. Why? Says the Zohar. Because Shabbos is the source of the next 6 days of the week, and they're all blessed from the Shabbos. They're all blessed from the Shabbos. So that's how Shabbos is the source of all blessing. It's the Makor HaBracha. Shabbos is the source of all blessing every day of the week. But there is a Chazal that seems to contradict that. It says, he who prepares an Erev Shabbos will eat on Shabbos, and he who doesn't prepare an Erev Shabbos will not eat on Shabbos. Which seems to suggest that it's the 6 days of the week that creates the Shabbos. So what is it? Is it the 6 days of the week who give you the Shabbos? He who eats on Erev Shabbos, Erev Shabbos means all 6 days. He who eats Erev Shabbos will eat on Shabbos. He who doesn't eat, he who prepares an Erev Shabbos will eat on Shabbos. That means that if you don't prepare, there's nothing for Shabbos. You have no Shabbos without the 6 days of the week. So it seems that the 6 days of the week is what makes the Shabbos. On the other hand, the Zohar says that Shabbos is the source of blessing for the 6 days of the week. So who's giving to who? Is this the 6 days of the week giving to the Shabbos, or is the Shabbos giving the 6 days of the week? So to understand this, we have to look at another concept. And the other concept is, can you imagine if we'd be reading inside, right? We probably wouldn't have gotten this far at the end of the night. Okay, we'd be stuck with all these ideas. The Gemara says, the Yalkut says that Shabbos has an aspect of kafel, of doubling. There's a lot of doubles when it comes to Shabbos. For example, the korban on Shabbos is 2 goats. The punishment for Shabbos is most you must, you shall surely die. The reward for Shabbos is double. It's oneg and kavod, a pleasure and honor for the Shabbos. The warnings of Shabbos, zochor and shamor, double warning. Even the song of Shabbos, mizmor shir liyom Shabbos, a double expressing of song. We have the 2 breads on Shabbos. So what does it mean that everything on Shabbos is double? So it doesn't mean double in the conventional sense. Let's say if a person steals from another person, has to pay double. Double means double of the same thing. It doesn't mean double the same thing, but rather it means the same thing as it means when we said that whoever keeps 2 Shabbos properly will be redeemed immediately. Double means there's 2 sides of the coin of Shabbos. There are 2 aspects of Shabbos that they're both part and parcel of what Shabbos is. And those 2 aspects of Shabbos means, as we've said, there's essentially 2 types of Shabbos systems. And, for example, if we only have one aspect, let's say you have one aspect of 6 days of work followed by a day of rest, or one aspect, or 1 day of rest followed by 6 days of work. Let's think of this. That's essentially what this means. Okay? If you have a system that starts with Shabbos and then moves ahead for 6 days, or have a system that starts with 6 days and moves ahead of Shabbos, then what is the reality that you're looking at? What is the reality? We could not define, could you define the reality of the world as resting? No. You'd say, just like you have time for one, you have time for the other. The reality is sometimes it's rest and sometimes it's work. Right? But now we're going to be introduced to a new system now. New idea. And the new idea is going to tell us that really it's possible to look at it with both aspects of Shabbos on both ends of a continuum. Where we start with Shabbos, then we move on with 6 days of the week, and then we continue with Shabbos. We first looked at the common way of looking at it this way. Do we start with Shabbos and then 6 days? Do we start with 6 days and then with Shabbos? Or perhaps a better way to look at it is start with Shabbos, you have 6 days, and then you have a Shabbos. What would be the essential difference between these two paradigms? The difference is, the first paradigm, you have two different realities. You have reality of Shabbos, a reality of working. If you have a paradigm where you start with Shabbos and you end with Shabbos, and then there's 6 days in the middle, as we'll explain more, it means the whole essence of creation is the two Shabboses, and really rest is the whole reality. And there's something in the middle between that reality, as we'll explain as we move ahead. As you'll see, it'll all become very clear in a minute. Now, the Midrash says there's 3 things in the world that are called novlos. Novlos, in Talmudic parlance, means fruit that's unripe, that falls off the tree prematurely. So the Gemara says there's a premature sleep, it's a typo. Premature death, it's a typo. Death is sleep, right? Before you come to death, before death, a knockoff of death is sleep. Premature prophecy is a dream. Premature olam haba is Shabbos. That means it's like Shabbos fell off the tree a little early. So olam haba is the full fruit you're waiting for, but if it comes off a little early, you get Shabbos. So therefore, Shabbos is like the world to come, and the world to come is called Yom Shekula Shabbos, a day that is completely Shabbos. So if we look at Shabbos from a historical point of view, from a cosmic point of view, which is more real, what do we have? We have the Shabbos before creation, the Shabbos where God created the world, where there's complete rest. There's no need to work. There's nothing missing. Then there's 6,000 years of history where there's work. And it ends with Olam Haba, which is Yom Shekulo Shabbos, complete rest. So it comes out, in this paradigm, the critical number is 7. It's a this world paradigm. And that's the paradigm that's easy for us to understand. But in the truer sense, the paradigm of Shabbos is really the paradigm of 8. It's a paradigm of 8. And we know that 7 is within nature and 8 is beyond nature. So the system that we're accustomed to is 6 days of work followed by a Shabbos. Therefore, our rest, it's very hard for it to be a complete type of rest, since it's a temporary rest from the work that we're doing and the work we're going to continue doing afterwards. We work for 6 days, we only rest for 1 day. And even more so, even if we worked for 6 days and rested for 7 days, there'd still be 2 conflicting forces. There'd be a force of work and a force of rest. And that creates a lot of the problems that we have. That's why Shabbos, it's hard to appreciate Shabbos, because you know that there's work right around the corner, and you're told to make it as if there is no work. But the secret of the system of 8, of rest, work, rest, means that the work comes forth from one type of rest and returns to a different type of rest. And therefore, the stature of creation is essentially moving from one state of rest to another state of rest. And those become the critical beginning and end points of the whole existence of the world. So, if we understand the system, it's only a path starting with 6 days and ending on Shabbos, then we also would have to explain, why do we prepare so early for Shabbos? I got till Shabbos. What have I got to rush for? And the simple answer is, and how do I view the 6 days? I view the 6 days as a means to reach the goal of Shabbos. But the first day has no essential ingredients of Shabbos. If you look at the old system, that's 6 days, whoever works for 6 days, you're going to get your Shabbos. Well, it has nothing Shabbos about it at all. It's a means to get to the Shabbos. But there's nothing Shabbos about that first day of the week. But if we say that, as we explained, that every day has an extra level of Shabbos and it fluctuates from Sunday going down to Monday and Tuesday and going back up Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, then what do we have? We have the essential aspect of Shabbos illuminating into each one of the 6 days of the week. That's a whole different way of looking at the 6 days of the week. Now, let's see now. How do the rabbis refer to these 6 days? What do the rabbis call these 6 days of the week? So, the Talmud tells us, for example, when two litigants come to a court, the Gemara says, what should the judge do? The first question they ask is, are you prepared to make a compromise? Before we start, are you prepared to compromise? And in Hebrew, it's called bitzua. Now, what does compromise mean? What does compromise mean? You take two extreme positions. This one doesn't want to pay him anything. This one wants everything. Compromise means you've got to take the two extreme positions and you've got to find some middle ground, an agreeable midpoint that everybody can live with. Now, bitzua, which means compromise, also is an expression of bitzias apas, breaking bread. You break bread. It's the same idea. So the simple concept of compromise is not to lean too much on one side, to one extreme, but try to find a midpoint that includes both sides. Now, if you think about this, if you look at it deeper, the midpoint, is it an independent position different than the other two positions or not? Is it an independent position? No. Rather, it's the middle of both sides. It's the middle of both sides. It's the furthest extreme of each side. For example, let's say this is side number 1 and this is side number 2. Now side number 2, one side says, let's say, I'm giving you nothing. The other side says, I'm giving you 100. Okay, what's the compromise going to be? 50. Is 50 its own point? Nothing to do with 0, nothing to do with 100? No, 0 is I don't want to give you nothing. Well, you know what? Until 50, it's still in the realm of nothing. It's just a little more than nothing, but it's closer to nothing than 100. And from 50 to 100, it's already entering the world of 100, something that I want. So what's the 50? 50 is that midpoint where it's touching the two extremes of each side, and it's where the two extremes can meet and join. So really, this midpoint has the elements of both aspects. That's what you're talking about when you have a compromise. So, if you have 6 days of the week, right, and 1 day of Shabbos, if you go with the old way, 6 days and then a Shabbos, well, the 6 days of the week are not the middle of the Shabbos. Totally the opposite. The 6 days of the week are the beginning of the week. A week that starts with the first day and ends with a Shabbos. So the 6 days of the week has nothing to do with Shabbos at all. But if our way of looking at the world is the cosmic way, the creation way, with 6 days of work in between two sides of two Shabboses, then the 6 days of the week become the midpoint in between the two Shabboses and are really part of those two Shabboses. Because really that's what these days, they're coming off from one Shabbos leading to another Shabbos. It's not that they start on their own as 6 days and then there's a Shabbos, but it's coming off of a Shabbos, going into a Shabbos, and they call this, it's like the midpoint of the two Shabboses. And it's like one whole Shabbos. It's like one entire Shabbos going from Shabbos to Shabbos. just compromise positions, as it were. You have one Shabbos is, you know what, my work's all done because there's nothing lacking at all. The other Shabbos is saying it's all done because I finished all the work. Now, we need some midpoint position in between that. The midpoint position is try to work and get it done, knowing that Hashem is getting it done anyway. You make Hishtadlus, even though you know Hishtadlus doesn't make a difference. Right? Really, on the one hand, you don't have to work, because Hashem already decided how much money you're going to make. On the other hand, it says you have to work. Okay, so that's the midpoint. That's the midpoint between a Shabbos that says there's no need to work, and another Shabbos says you finished all the work that has to be done. You worked and finished everything. So what is that? The 6 days of the week is exactly the compromise. You have one position that says Shabbos is you don't have to do anything. The other one says you're able to finish everything. So what's the compromise? Work in a world where your work really isn't doing anything. That's how the 6 days is this midpoint from one Shabbos to another. So it comes out that so that's a second level. So we have two levels. You have a level, the world of the 7, where you're saying it's 6 days of the week that leads to a Shabbos, where these 6 days really are their own 6 days. It's their own reality. There isn't really a lot of Shabbos in those 6 days. But somehow, if you do what you do on these 6 days, which we'll explain, it's a means to get to Shabbos, but it's not really Shabbos. Or you say, no, the truth of the matter is, now this is more existential, but if you look in a cosmic way, there was a Shabbos before the world was creation, where all the work, there's no need to work at all. Then you got the 6 days of the week, and then you have the completion. You have Mashiach. What's Mashiach? Mashiach Olam Haba. Olam Haba is what? When everybody did all the work they were meant to do. What is Olam Haba? There was a lot of work that had to get done, and the work got done. The world has reached a state of perfection. There's nothing more that you have to do. There was a lot of work, but all the work is done. That's Olam Haba. All the work is done. Over here, there's no work that had to be done. Over here, Olam Haba, all the work was done, and it is done. And then everything in between is supposed to be some kind of compromise to that. And really, they're all aspects of Shabbos. As the first 3 days are playing off of the first Shabbos, as we'll see in a minute, as now you begin to see that this is the Shabbos of the source of blessing, because you really realize that all the work is done, and that's a very blessed state, and to put that into your focus of how do you live your days. And then to say, as we'll see in a minute, but there is certain work I do that I will appreciate that next Shabbos, because we ain't coming to Olam Haba until we've done a certain degree of work. So now these 6 days, really, this system is saying that these are all, everything is Shabbos. This is a heavy dose of Shabbos, this is a heavy dose of Shabbos, and this is a compromise dose of Shabbos. But each one has an essential element of Shabbos to it. Now he then explains a third concept, which he doesn't really explain very well, and which I can't explain it better than what I'm reading. And the first two seem to make a lot of sense. The third one, we'll have to ruminate on it a little bit more. But once the world recognizes the true reality of Hashem, and we come to the point of coming to the world to come, there'll be a third picture. Third picture is where Shabbos is the focal point, and all the other 6 points, it's like the Star of David. I'm not doing it right. Yeah. I'm doing it right. Yeah. Where you have all the 6 points, or for that matter, a circle. We have a point center and a center point, and a point center around it, which really tells you that everything always was all Shabbos to begin with. If you have a circle, it's one unit. The center point is the focal point of the whole unit. But really, when the end days will come, we're going to see that everything was completely Shabbos, although we didn't appreciate it at the time. Now, this is way beyond what we can understand right now, but that's a thought we throw out. So we really have, there's 3 levels. The level, and he repeats this a million times in this chapter, we have 6 days of work followed by the Shabbos, like steps of the ladder. The 6 days are not Shabbos at all, and they are just means to reach a Shabbos. The second level is the rest system, where 6 days are a compromise aspect of the two Shabbases. The one Shabbos where there's no need to work, and the other Shabbos saying all the work has been done. And then the final level, when we reach the level of Yom Shekulo Shabbos, Olam Haba is a day that is all Shabbos. That means everything is Shabbos. Everything always was Shabbos. There wasn't anything but Shabbos. Right? And everything shares the Shabbos, which will still needs more explanation. Now, let us look more carefully at that very Shabbos, the first Shabbos. What would have happened if first man would not have sinned? He would have immediately entered into the Yom Shekulo Shabbos. He would have Shabbos, and then what would have been the day after that day? Shabbos. What would have been the day after that? Shabbos. And just one Shabbos after another. Had he not sinned, would there have ever been 6 days of work?
There was.
No, not for man.
Not for man.
God had worked 6 days, but man would never have to work a day in his life. He brings him into the world on Erev Shabbos. Just be a good boy for a few hours. You're going to have Shabbos, and what's going to be? Yom Shekulo Shabbos. And what happens when Shabbos is over? The next 24 hours is also Shabbos. And the next 24 hours is also Shabbos. He would have instantly entered the world of Yom Shekulo Shabbos. There'd never been a concept of 6 days of work at all. This is a concept of 8 days of all being Shabbos. It's Shabbos to Shabbos to Shabbos to Shabbos. Right, so again, we have one concept, level 1, where there's 6 days of the work week leading up to the Shabbos, which is 7. That's the totally this world understanding. That's the way we understand Shabbos right now. We can't, right now, it's hard to understand anything more than that. I just do what I can. Somehow, whoever prepares on Shabbos, Erev Shabbos, is going to eat on Shabbos. There's nothing Shabbos about these 6 days that I perceive. I just seem to be working hard, and there's nothing Shabbos about it. Somehow I'm going to have a better Shabbos because of that. It's a means to a better Shabbos. The second level is the Shabbos, then the work, and then the Shabbos, the 8-day concept, has some connection to first man before he sinned, which is hidden for us, but then again he did sin, so then there's this supernal level of, well, eventually we're going to get to Mashiach, and we're going to get to Olam Haba, so it's an 8-day concept. Some of the beginning we understand, but the end of it we don't quite understand. And then the third level is, well, everything really should have all been Shabbos. Had man never sinned, it all should have been Shabbos. And eventually we're going to have to get to that point where really everything should be Shabbos.
Is that the circle?
That's the circle. That's the circle. Now, one other point he brings out. Shabbos. What do we know about Shabbos? Shabbos has the same root of the word shave, shuv, tshuv. And the purpose of all mankind is, number one, each and every one of us has to do tshuva on all our individual averos. That's one kind of tshuva. Then we have to do tshuva, really, for man's first sin, for meaning from the Eitz Hadas. Then there has to be a broader tshuva, a man's first sin. And then we have to return to that spiritual root, which is even beyond the possibility of sinning. Not only have to correct man's first sin, we have to go, but we're never going to sin again. And we said Shabbos means tshuva, to return. And there's 4 auspicious times for tshuva. One is every night of the week before you go to sleep. That's when we make a cheshbon nefesh. Number 2 is Erev Shabbos. Number 3 is Erev Rosh Chodesh. And number 4 is Erev Rosh Hashanah. Now, why is Shabbos a day of tshuva? Because everything returns to its source on Shabbos. The Midrash says that when Adam HaRishon saw that Cain was able to cut a deal with Hashem after he did his Avera, he said, I did tshuva, and things worked out. He sang the song, Mizmor Shir Yom HaShabbos. Why did he say, what does singing the song of Shabbos have to do with tshuva? Because it must be that Shabbos is the essence of tshuva. So we got to find a way to use the Shabbos in order to do tshuva for our personal sins, and then afterwards bring the Shabbos to a place where man would never have sinned. Somehow Shabbos has to get us to that point. Through Shabbos, we're able to do tshuva on our personal sins, tshuva on Adam HaRishon's sin, and eventually get us to the point where we never would have sinned at all. All these 3 systems somehow has to fit into tshuva, which he doesn't elaborate on. Okay, now he brings a very interesting point, and it's a little bit more real over here. It's a lot of theory this week, right? But from all the theory you're seeing, that these 6 days of the week are not just 6 days of the week. Okay, and they can't be treated as just 6 days that have nothing to do with Shabbos. So, what is the part of Shabbos that is the really special part of Shabbos? Well, we know Shabbos is the root of all holidays. Shabbos was permanently part of the creation. Doesn't depend on a Beis Din. Shabbos comes like clockwork every 7 days. The holidays depend on when the Beis Din makes the month. Shabbos is also called the Day of the Soul. And because it's called the Day of the Soul, that's the source of the light of Shabbos that every Jew is looking for. There's this, what we call the Or of Shabbos, the light of Shabbos, the illumination of Shabbos that everybody's looking for. And I underlined this. He says the goal of what we're learning about Shabbos, what are we trying, all the talk we've been talking about for the last hour, what's the goal? Is to reach that inner light that exists in the essence of Shabbos. We're trying to get to that light of the Shabbos. There's something special about that Shabbos. Now, Shabbos is found, when Shabbos comes, Shabbos is in every Jew. Wherever you are, it's Shabbos. It's not like other mitzvahs. Other mitzvahs, for example, lulav and esrog, shofar, matzah. If you don't have a shofar or a matzah, you don't have the mitzvah. Shabbos, no matter where you are, there is Shabbos. Shabbos is there, the mitzvah is there, wherever you are, because it's totally depending on the time that we're in, which we're in the time of Shabbos. Now there's different levels of appreciating the Shabbos. On the one hand, on a superficial level, you say it's the time from Friday night to Saturday night, that's the 7th day, and that's one aspect of Shabbos you all have. But that's the superficial one. That's the part you just keep physically, the time part. But then there's the part we call the light of Shabbos. There is the Or of Shabbos. What is that light of Shabbos? What are we talking about? What's that we're trying to get? So this is the first aspect of the Shabbos. When it says, he who works on Erev Shabbos will eat on Shabbos. The simple level of the 6 days of the week plus the one, with no previous Shabbos. Which means, what is this light of Shabbos? What is the light of Shabbos you're supposed to experience? It's parallel to the actions that you were occupied with during the 6 days of the week. What does it really mean to work on the 6 days of the week? What does it mean? He who works on the 6 days will have what to eat on Shabbos. It doesn't mean working in the conventional sense. It's working in terms of Torah and mitzvahs. It's a lot of work to learn Torah during the week. It's a lot of work to do mitzvahs. A lot of work to daven. Those are all lots of work, right? The light of Shabbos is based on how much spiritual work you did in the 6 days of the week. And the amount of light you receive on Shabbos depends exactly on how much work you did on the 6 days of the week. So now the question is, so what's this light based on? So, even though Shabbos means rest, but the light that illuminates from the Shabbos, believe it or not, comes from the action that you did in the 6 days of the week. That state of called menucha. Menucha means you've reached the goal, right? And that has only a value based on the effort that you make. And that's the Shabbos that we understand. So what is this exactly? So he says, this again is the Shabbos as a result of the sin of the first man. Because remember, if man would never have sinned, there wouldn't have been any 6 days of work. There only been God's actions and not man's actions. But when it says, he who prepares for the Shabbos, he occupies on the Shabbos, that's a focus on man's efforts. So this is the Shabbos that comes as the result of man's first sin. And this first level of light we receive on Shabbos, which means, getting to the point, the actual actions that we did in the 6 days of the week, they do create a light. You put on tefillin, you keep kosher, you daven, you learn Torah, you are creating a light. You are creating an illumination that's there. The problem is, during those 6 days of the week, it's very hard to see the light. You do a mitzvah, you don't necessarily appreciate that light. Very hard to see that, right? They don't illuminate, the mitzvahs don't illuminate to their full potential because of the physical existence that we see. Our eyes are fooled by what we see, and we think the real world is what we're seeing, and that's not the real world. And since our eyes are so used to seeing the world that way, you can't appreciate the light of a mitzvah. So on Shabbos, what happens is that grayishness, that physical existence. Now you're going to be able to appreciate. There's a whole avoda. You have to move from living in the level of the 6 days of the week You have to be able to clear your lenses so that on Shabbos, those mitzvahs are able to shine properly. Now that's going to take a lot of work to change your view of existence from a sixth day of the world view of existence to a Shabbos view of existence. Once you're in the right mindset and the right view of seeing what Shabbos is, then all of a sudden those mitzvahs, the light of those mitzvahs become very clear to see. And that's the delight of Shabbos. In other words, you do something that's amazing, but you can't see it. You do a mitzvah. Every mitzvah you do is an amazing thing. It's a tremendous connection to Hashem. It's closing a circuit between you and Hashem. It's a tremendous light. It's tremendous clarity, tremendous pleasure that the mitzvah gives you. But you don't feel it. You don't feel it because the coarseness of the physical world of the 6 days of the week is so strong as a result of man's first sin. You don't even think you're doing anything amazing. You don't see any light. No light bulbs are flashing. Come Shabbos, when you're now entering, because first of all, you're getting the neshama yisera. You're getting an extra level of soul. But there's work you have to do. It's not going to come by itself, and you can have the extra neshama yisera, and you still don't know you have it. There is an extra ability to see the light, but there's things you're going to have to do on the level of nefesh, the level of ruach, the level of neshama. You know, on Sunday you went to the store and you got the cow, right? And on Monday you went to the vegetable store, you got the vegetables. And on Tuesday you got the canned goods. And Wednesday you're starting to shech the cow. You're starting to clean the cow. You're starting to cook the cow. And on Thursday you're making the challahs. And mamish things are beginning to smell good. And things are amazing. But you haven't tasted anything yet. So how yummy is that? Nothing. All of a sudden, on Friday night, you get to eat it. What happened? What happened? A different part of your senses was activated. It was enabled to be used. Believe me, if you never be able to eat food, you would never enjoy cooking. Right? Why do you enjoy cooking? You'd be out of your mind to enjoy cooking if you can never eat it. Right? You enjoy cooking because you know what? I get to eat it. Oh, it's kedai. It's kedai. No matter how hard it is, it can take you hours and hours to make a great dish. When it tastes good, it was worth it. Misha tarach Erev Shabbos, yochel b'Shabbos. He who works on Erev Shabbos is going to enjoy the Shabbos. So what the Gemara really is, they think it's about food. It's only using it as an analogy. But whoever works on Erev Shabbos is going to enjoy the Shabbos. You do mitzvahs during the week. You will now have the ability, there's something to enjoy. Now, you begin to understand, what if you didn't cook anything for Shabbos? Mamish cooked nothing. Shabbos comes. How much is your stomach going to enjoy from the Shabbos? Nothing. So just as you understand, you're not going to enjoy anything. And that's why every good Jewish housewife or house husband is make sure to prepare for Shabbos. If you don't, you're not going to enjoy the Shabbos. You're just not going to enjoy it. On a physical, you're not going to enjoy it. But the Shabbos wasn't made for food and kishkin sholent. It was made for the neshama. The neshama, your enjoyment of your neshama. Now, you only can enjoy your neshama on Shabbos if there's something to enjoy, if you prepared something. So if you spent a week learning, if in a week you learned 3-4 pages of Mishnah Berurah, and you learned a couple pages of Gemara, and you learned a couple pages of this, and you did a number of acts of kindness, and you gave tzedakah, and you daven, and you this, and even though, you didn't get to taste anything yet, because why? You're in the cloudy 6 days of the week. But then Hashem gives you the gift of Shabbos. Also in Shabbos you get to taste it. But what's there to taste if you don't learn any Torah the whole week? What's there to taste if you don't daven the whole week? You don't do chesed the whole week. There's nothing to taste. So that is all the first system only. The lowest system. This is the lowest system that exists. That Hashem brings, that on Shabbos, based on what you've done, those 6 days, inherently those 6 days, on one level that's not Shabbos, because all the barriers are still there. The 6 days of the week are barriers. You're doing actions, that's amazing, but you ain't tasting anything. You're cooking, you're not eating. It ain't Shabbos. Shabbos is eating. I'm preparing the eating. When Shabbos comes, when I can eat, I'll enjoy it, but I'm not enjoying it till then. It's not Shabbos. But now I did all these mitzvahs, you're still not enjoying it really. The light, there is light, you can't see the light. There's too many barriers, you can't enjoy it. There's no Shabbos there to enjoy it. Comes the Shabbos, now that's the way to enjoy it. Now, there's going to be things you're going to have to do. There's many things. First, you have to cook the meals. The spiritual meals have to be cooked all 6 days. Then you got to do things to be able to remove the barriers so that you can enjoy it on the Shabbos. So everybody says Shabbos is a great day. Shabbos is only a great day to the degree that you're using the 6 days to build up to the Shabbos. Right? That's on the simple level. And that Halavai would be on that level. Halavai would be on that level. But that's the one point. But we say, but we need to observe 2 Shabboses. We observe 2 Shabbos and we be redeemed. That means that this first level of Shabbos is not enough. It's a starting point, and there are people who enjoy this level of Shabbos, but it's not enough to bring Mashiach. Because at the end of the day, we still don't think the work's not done. The work's not done. All right? Now, the second level is man is leaving the Shabbos and using the next 6 days to reach the next Shabbos. On that level, the previous Shabbos is what gives the light into the 6 days of the week. So you have 6 days of the week. The first system is saying that the light of Shabbos comes from what the 6 days of the week make. We ask the question, is it Misha Tark Erev Shabbos, or is Shabbos the source of blessing? The answer is both. That's the double aspect of Shabbos. There's 2 aspects of Shabbos. The aspect, I do mitzvah, I do all these things during the week, and that's not going to illuminate when the Shabbos comes. And then there's another level where the Shabbos before was so illuminating that it illuminates into the 6 days of the week. This isn't the result of activity, it's a result of being rooted in the rest that came before the Shabbos. And somehow this really should be happening every Shabbos. It's a virtuous circle, a virtuous cycle. But really there's supposed to be, there are 2 aspects to the Shabbos. That really is the difference between Friday night and Shabbos day. This, in the mystical understandings, there's 3 parts to Shabbos. There are 3 distinct units of Shabbos. Shabbos is not one day of the same spiritual energy. It's 3 separate energies. Friday night is one energy, Shabbos morning is another energy, and Shabbos afternoon is a different energy. So now, what energy do you think you're getting on the Friday night? On Friday night, it's basically, by then, all the shades have been removed. You can begin to enjoy what you did during the week. Right? You can begin to get that. That's the one aspect. That's the part of 6 days of the week came before the Shabbos. But then there's the other aspect. The Shabbos comes with the next 6 days of the week. Now you need Hashem to give you something extra. That comes in the morning. Hashem gives you something extra that's meant for you to enjoy now and to carry into the next 6 days of the week. Right? So there's a light of Shabbos that pours into the week, and there's a light of Shabbos that receives from the week. Now this second level is the light of first man, had he not sinned, and entering into Shabbos after 6 creation days. It's the level of Shabbos before the next 6 days. Now the third level, which is the most hard to understand, is had first man never ever sinned, and there would be a constant eternal Shabbos, and that's where creation has to finally return to, and that's what we say that Shabbos is like the world to come. Living that kind of Shabbos is mean to bring us one to get that source, and that's really what Shalosh Shudas is. The end of the day, the end of the Shabbos is to realize there is an aspect of Shabbos that never ends. So in each part of Shabbos, there's 3 Shabboses you're meant to keep, although we can't totally live in those realities now. The one that's easier to live in is the Friday night reality. The Friday night reality of you did mitzvahs, you did a lot of things, and you've created the potential for the light of Shabbos so that you can appreciate it on Friday night. If you've done all the proper preparations, then you can begin to appreciate and enjoy the Shabbos. Then there's this other aspect of Shabbos preceding the next 6 days of creation, where Shabbos itself pours itself into you. A free gift from Hashem pours into you. That's like Shabbos morning. And the tefillos of that Shabbos morning would reflect that. And then there's a point Shabbos afternoon where, forget about all that stuff. If Adam would never have sinned, then it would always been Shabbos all the time and never anything beyond that. And that's what Shalosh Shudas at the end of the day is supposed to have. Now, although you can't understand all these ideas, but he says that a person who at least feels some satisfaction from the light of Shabbos now, that means you have a chance to enjoy the light of Shabbos later in the world to come. Shabbos is main olam haba. It's a taste of the world to come. If you want to know you're going to the world to come, there's a very easy way to know how much you're enjoying the Shabbos. If a person has a little piece of a loaf of bread, it tastes good, then, he'll like the whole loaf of bread too. If you don't like the Shabbos, you're not going to like the world to come. It's plain and simple. Now, you may not, when you're liking the Shabbos, be at all three levels of appreciating the Shabbos, but at least you're getting part of the loaf of bread. So, what's one other thing to call Shabbos? So what do we have now? Let's conclude. We live in this world. That's where we live. One day we're going to come to the world to come. The analogy is very simple. You have two cities with a river in between. How are you going to get from one city to the other? You build a bridge. So Shabbos is the bridge between those two worlds. But the question is, how do you build that bridge? Well, the answer is, before you even build a bridge, you have to know that there's another city beyond the river. If you live in this city all your life and you can't believe there's a city beyond the river, then I have no need to build a bridge, do I? The first step to build the bridge is to know there's a city on the other side of the river. If there's a city on the other side of the river, now at least there's a need to build a bridge. Now, the Hasidic masters, they call this bridge in Hebrew a tzinor. A tzinor is like a pipeline. Tzinor is spelled tzadi nun reish. If you reverse the letters, mix them up, it spells the words ratzon, which means a desire. So the real pipeline that connects you from this world across the bridge to the next world is the desire to even want to be in the next world. We have to know that there is a very inner deep light to Shabbos. And that will build up our desire and yearn for that light of the Shabbos. And then to the degree that you yearn for that light of the Shabbos, that can be your potential level to merit in the world to come. But the truth is, not only in the next world, but even today. Because to the degree that you're yearning, if you really look at the circle properly, if this dot is the world to come, and everything else is all of other life, then really you should be able to enjoy the world to come now as well. There really is an aspect. There are tzaddikim in this world who live this way. There are holy people who are living Yom Shekulo Shabbos right now. And they feel that there's never any work that has to be done. The work has all been done. What is the nature of their work? It needs more explanation. There are some who live on this level. Halavai, we're on this level. But we're just showing how much depth there is over here. We have to realize there are three distinct aspects of Shabbos. The one that we recognize now, the one that we have to make efforts, we have to do mitzvahs, we have to learn, and that will create the ability that when the light can be turned on Shabbos, there's at least a light bulb to turn on. And if you're able to block out all the junk that the 6 days of the week have, which is the whole avoda of Erev Shabbos, is to block it all out, and you have some mitzvahs, then Hashem says, now you're going to enjoy, you're going to sit and bask in the enjoyment of the mitzvahs that you created, which is also sort of your olam haba too, based on the mitzvahs that you did as well. The second level is the Shabbos after the creation of the first man. Man walks right into Shabbos. And we have Shabbos, 6 days in Shabbos, which are really saying that each one of these 6 days is feeding off of or building up into that Shabbos, and really saying that all reality is Shabbos or lower degrees of Shabbos. And that would mean there's a whole different way for you to look at Tuesday. A whole different way to look at Tuesday. Tuesday is the compromise between the Shabbos where you don't have to do any work and the Shabbos where all the work is done. Somehow that's a compromise to those days. Right? And finally, the highest level, the level of complete rest. Yom Shekulo Shabbos. Had man never sinned. And we have to get back to that level. When all society gets back to the level where man has come back to that point where we never ever want to sin again, then we've brought the world to the place of the Shabbos that is the Yom Shekulo Shabbos. So this is an introduction. I don't know if this helped anybody or just confused people, but one thing for sure it did, it shows there's a lot more than just, starting Shabbos. And you begin to appreciate that this concept of Erev Shabbos isn't just Erev Shabbos. Erev Shabbos, so in order to have a successful Shabbos, you've got to be thinking Shabbos, Friday, Thursday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Monday, Sunday, Shabbos. And to begin to start thinking of paradigms of, I have one paradigm of 6 days of working spiritually and hope the lights turn on Shabbos. Another paradigm is I'm really coming off of Shabbos where there was no work that ever had to be done. And I'm led into and that feeds into making the 6 days very special, which now feeds into making that next Shabbos even more special, and that every day of the week is a part of Shabbos. And that's another level you'd like to appreciate, where even the days of the week are Shabbos-dik type of days. And then we're all hoping that we'll get to that final level, what? Where every single day always is exactly the same Shabbos that's always been. But that only comes with people who yearn for it. So there's levels that are way beyond us, but if we don't begin with the first step, we're never going to get to the second and third step. Okay, that's all for today.